All right, let's get straight to it. This is a Code Ninja security advisory. We've compiled the data for 2025, and frankly, the findings are pretty stark. We're issuing this briefing for all you security practitioners, CISOs, and sysadmins on the front lines. The threat landscape has fundamentally changed. So let's dive right into the intelligence.
I want you to really let this sink in. This quote from our annual review. It's the core thesis of this entire briefing. The whole idea of a scheduled Patch Tuesday is a relic. We're now in a state of constant vigilance against active, in-the-wild threats. The adversary's clock, it's ticking in hours, not weeks.
And here's the hard proof. 245. That's how many new vulnerabilities were added to CISA's known exploited vulnerabilities catalog just in 2025. Now, to be clear, this isn't a list of potential threats. This is the "it's happening right now" list. And that number is a massive jump from 186 in 2024. This isn't just a number, it's a flashing red light signaling a huge acceleration in the speed and scale of attacks.
Okay, so this new reality obviously demands a new strategy, right? To defend our networks effectively, we first have to understand the ground we're fighting on because the whole battlefield has shifted right under our feet.
For years, we all operated on a pretty predictable rhythm. A vulnerability gets disclosed, it's given a CVSS score, and we plan our patching around things like Patch Tuesday. Well, that model is now dangerously obsolete. Why? Because threat actors are weaponizing flaws faster than we can possibly patch them. The main takeaway here is this. Your patching priority is no longer dictated by a theoretical severity score. It's dictated by hard evidence of active exploitation. Period.
Now, what's really interesting is where the attacks are focused. Take a look at this data. We're comparing 2025 to 2024. Yeah, Microsoft is still a big target, no surprise there, but look at the growth for vendors like Fortinet, Linux, and Qualcomm. This tells us that attackers are expanding their focus. They're moving beyond traditional desktop software and hitting the very fabric of our networks, our edge devices, our firmware, even mobile chipsets. The perimeter itself is under assault.
So how did this whole assault unfold over the year? We've analyzed all the telemetry to basically reconstruct the adversary's playbook quarter by quarter. This is the evidence trail they left behind.
You know, these attacks weren't random at all. They followed a very clear strategic progression. The year kicked off with a direct assault on critical infrastructure. Then they pivoted to web platforms and identity systems. By the third quarter, the focus had shifted to deep enterprise compromise, and they wrapped up the year by going after the modern frameworks that power our applications. This was a calculated, evolving campaign.
This table really breaks it down and puts names to the targets. In Q1, vulnerabilities in things like Avanti VPNs and VMware hypervisors just got hammered. Q2, attackers went after identity through systems like Crush FTP. Q3, we saw attacks against core enterprise platforms like Cisco and SolarWinds. Seriously, if you're an administrator for any of these systems, your perimeter was directly in the crosshairs last year.
So, the big question? Who's behind all these attacks? What's the motivation? Well, that brings us to the primary threat actors who are monetizing these vulnerabilities at a massive scale, the ransomware groups.
To really understand the threat today, you have to understand the business model. It's called Ransomware as a Service, or RAS, and it basically functions like a dark franchise. You have these core operators who develop the malware, and then you have affiliates who carry out the attacks. This decentralized structure makes the entire ecosystem incredibly resilient. You take down one group, and the affiliates and their tools just migrate to another one.
And their methods have evolved too. This fight is no longer just about decrypting your files. Double-extortion is now the standard playbook. What that means is attackers steal your data before they encrypt it, so the threat becomes a public leak. This completely shifts the battle from a simple recovery operation to a full-blown crisis of reputational, legal, and regulatory risk.
For all you threat hunters out there, the key is knowing who uses what. This intelligence is absolutely vital. The Qilin group, for example, heavily targeted Fortinet vulnerabilities. Akira focused on VMware and Cisco, and the new, sophisticated group, Warlock, has been leveraging SharePoint exploits. Being able to connect a vulnerability to a specific threat actor, that's how you get proactive in your defense.
Okay, we've analyzed the threat. We've looked at the actors. Now let's shift gears and talk action. This is your defensive playbook. This is what you must do now.
Let's be crystal clear on this. The data is unequivocal.
The two main doors into your organization last year were compromised credentials and unpatched perimeter devices, identity and edge infrastructure. That's it. This is where the initial battles are being won and lost. Your defense absolutely has to start right here.
So based on everything we've seen, we have 3 immediate critical recommendations for you. Number 1, prioritize your patching based on that KEV catalog. If it's being exploited, it is your top priority. Number 2, harden your edge. Treat your VPNs and firewalls like the critical entry points they are, not just some passive barrier. And number 3, enforce botnet hygiene. That means getting end-of-life hardware off your network immediately.
I'm going to repeat this because it is the single most important takeaway from this briefing. The old way is over. If a vulnerability appears on CISA's KEV list, it is not a theoretical risk. It is an active threat, and you are a target. This has to become your #1 patching priority. No excuses.
And let's look at a real-world example of that botnet hygiene point. This D-Link router vulnerability, it's from 2022. It's old news, right? Wrong. It was just added to the KEV catalog in December of 2025 because it's still being actively exploited to build botnets. This is what we mean by a zombie on your network. Your end-of-life hardware is a persistent threat, just waiting to be reanimated by an attacker. You have to get it offline.
So, there you have it. We've just laid out the adversary's strategy, their targets, and their tools from the past year. Their entire playbook for 2025 is now public knowledge. So the only question that really matters is, what are you going to do with this intelligence? Are you ready for 2026?